No, we are empowering the NHA now to demolish these old structures. Walang legal issue doon.
Tama.
Doon ako sa karirinig ko lang sinabi ng presidente.
That's right.
Kabago-bago noon I mean, bago in the sense, let's relatively new. 20, yung Yolanda was 2014 ba?
That's correct. 2013 po.
2013. So 2013. So yun po yun. I don't want those responsible. Kasi yung word kasi natin, yung phrase natin na structurally unsound, pwede kasing because of the passage of time or because of or from the very start.
Right.
Ayoko pong makatakas yung mga who have built structurally unsound housing projects for the NHA from the very start. Hindi dapat makalusot yun, hindi dapat masalupo yun ng NHA. Mabura.
Tama.
Mabura yung ebidensya
Perhaps what we could do then is subject to the right of the NHA to pursue the errant contractors through suspension or cancellation of contract, filing suit, and subjecting them to existing laws and regulations subject to style.
Yes, and it's not the right of the NHA, but let's make it
the
the duty.
obligation,
Yes,
yeah.
the duty or the obligation of the NHA. So, Mr. President,
what page are we in? Page 7?
Page 7.
Page 7, line 13.
Okay.
Yes, line 13, after subject to existing laws and regulations, if we could add the duty of the NHA to run after those responsible for these structurally unsound and substandard projects.
Given the acceptance of the sponsor as heard by the chair, is there any objection? There being none, amendment is approved subject to style.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Minority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
May we proceed? Page 8.
Yes, I still have an amendment on page 7, line 15, to delete the phrase relevant government agencies, LGUs, and. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
Mr. President, what would be the effect of that? Kasi in my earlier amendment, we even took the trouble of mentioning the LGUs, but this latest amendment, deletes the mention of the LGUs. What would be the effect, Mr. President? And why?
The reason is we have already mentioned it in the earlier amendment. It's to be transferred.
It's a redundancy.
It's a redundancy, so we're shifting it to anterior amendment.
May we proceed?
No, to a latter new amendment.
Wala pa.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, it will not disappear. It will just be moved forward. Sorry.
May question tayo.
So the amendment has been approved. Moving forward, any amendments, any other amendments on page 7? If there are none, what's the next page? Page 8?
Yes, sorry. On the same page and the same section, line 20, we insert the phrase, sorry. Okay. On the same page and same section, paragraph 11K, line 16, after the word entities, to insert the phrase as authorized under RA 11966, otherwise known as the Public-Private Partnership Code of the Philippines, and with relevant government agencies and LGUs. Doon po nalipat yung kanina tinanggal.
Any objection to the
move.
proposed amendment? There being none, amendment is approved.
Still on the same page and section, line 20, to insert the phrase and utilities such as power, water, information, and communication technology utilities after the word facilities. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? Hearing none, amendment is approved subject to style.
Thank you. On the same page and section, line 21, after the semicolon, to delete the conjunction and. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the section and page that we are dealing with, line 22 now, add the punctuation mark, semicolon, and the word "and" after the word beneficiaries. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? There being none, amendment is approved.
Page 8.
Yes, we're now on page...
I have a question concerning line 1, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, page 7 still, line 23, to insert a new paragraph under enumeration 4, enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of housing projects. I so move, Mr.
So
President.
this will be number 4 in the enumeration.
Yes, number 4, new
Any
subtitle.
objection to the proposed amendment? There being none, amendment is approved. Now, page 8.
Page
Yes.
8, Mr. President, just some questions before we tackle amendments, Mr. President.
Okay.
Page 8, line 1, which is subparagraph A. We mention here the power
Okay.
of the NHA to lease or exchange lands for purposes of housing development. Will this be a new power of the NHA?
This, in fact, is a power that has been given to the housing authorities under RA 7279. The term that was used was land swapping in the old law of 1992. And it's defined as the process of land acquisition by exchanging land for another piece of land of equal value. And this has actually occurred in the case of NHA with regard to the Philippine Children's Hospital in Quezon City.
So, ano ibig sabihin nun? Si NHA was the previous owner of that lot where the hospital
Was built.
is
Thereafter,
built, yes.
NHA turned it over to DOH to administer, to manage, and so on. But
What was
DOH,
swapped? What was
in
swapped?
turn, swapped them with land in Cebu, which NHA was looking for housing in Samban, Cebu City.
And of equal value yun.
I believe that there was a top-up in cash on the part of DOH, but nevertheless, it was almost equal value.
So, ganun. So,
So I believe they're looking forward to more such exchanges because some of the land that's in their hands, for example, are lands that are already appraised or have already risen in value in the center of town, and the housing should be further away because these lands have become commercial.
or too small. Siguro
Or too small,
too
that's
small
correct.
yes.
And the preference
Pero-
is to have single dwellings rather than condominium-type developments.
So, pero yung example po natin is government to government.
That's correct,
Pero
government to
Are we
government.
envisioning the NHA to private sector exchange of land?
Yes, I think there's a
We
provision.
are allowing it?
I think there's a provision in the Urban Development Act. In 1992, there's a proviso that more valuable land owned by private persons may be exchanged with less valuable land to carry out the objectives of this act. Even if there's a disparity in value so that the housing program can proceed, the government is willing to absorb the difference and the loss in value.
So in that example, it is the NHA which owns the more valuable land?
Yes, because the land was in Quezon City. And that was the hospital.
No, theory ba?
Sorry, in theory.
Theory-wise, dun po sa inputs ng ating sponsor, ano yung
That's right.
example natin na there's a difference in the value of the
Yes,
exchange lands and then
Yes,
it is the NHA which
Which will absorb the
Oh.
loss or the
okay,
difference.
the NHA therefore owns the more valuable piece of land,
Exchanges
accepts
it.
a lot with lesser value,
Yes,
and does not require the cash top up from the other party.
yes, that's
So we
right.
will not require it.
That's what the RA 7279
So that's,
presently states.
I think that's the danger that we should guard against.
Yes,
Mr.
I
President.
think perhaps
In
it's
that
time
case,
to revisit this
In that
because
case, that's why I got worried about this.
that's correct.
And then the first word pa, Mr. President, if we disregard exchange lands or exchange lands, so lease, we lease land for purpose of housing development. In what sense yun? I hope that is not the land where the housing units are built, because government should not be paying rental in for a long period of time for
I think they're
projects.
looking forward to commercial development as well as long-term leases even for housing. And that's the reason why lease became relevant.
Pero si NHA ang lessee dito?
That's right, for a long-term lease in areas where there's no land for sale. This usually occurs in the urban centers where condominium developments are the only option for housing.
No, does that make sense, Mr. President? Na in the government's desire to provide housing units to its citizens,
Oh.
it will lease.
Sorry.
It will lease land.
I'm sorry, I think baliktad. Baliktad po ang pangyayari. Ang may-ari nung commercial land ang magli-lease sa mga private developers. Kasi some of the NHA land, for example, has now become commercially valuable. So rather than keep it in NHA hands with no income whatsoever, NHA leases it out to private developers at binabayaran ng gobyerno for the use of that land, yung lease.
Yes, but
baliktad
okay.
pala.
But okay, the private lessee of NHA land with commercial value leases it not for housing projects. Tama? Pero pagkasulat po nito, it's a lease or exchange lands for purposes of housing development. Medyo, that's why I got worried, Mr. President.
I think this refers to mixed use in urban centers where the commercial area is in the lower portion, pays for the housing above. I think that's what anticipated. So there will still be a housing component, but the commercial income is what NHA is looking forward to. Kasi hindi naman ginagamit yung mga lupain nila na gusto naman na alkilahin ng iba pang mga developer.
Okay, but ito, basta ang list dito, sa ginagamit sa page 8, line 1, si NHA ang lessor.
Tama.
Okay. So in such an arrangement, yung beneficiary ba ng housing unit, will they ever get to own the housing unit?
Kaya nga, pero for housing. Sorry. Yung bahay. So,
Mahirap ata
may
yun.
titulo naman yung mga may-ari ng bahay dun sa itaas, sila, may titulo naman sila, may condominium title naman sila talaga. Pero yung sa ibaba, yung commercial, yun ang pinapaupa ng NHA sa private developer.
In that example, who spent for the structure?
NHA pays for the structure. They lease the commercial spaces.
Oo nga, pero ang structure po ng sentence kasi natin, lease or exchange lands for purpose of housing development. So, lease lands. Lease or exchange, where page 8, line 1.
That's right.
Lease, the phrase I'm focusing on is lease or exchange lands for purposes of housing development. So, lease lands. Lease lands. Yun po yun.
So, dapat lease, comma, delete or,
Well,
and then exchange land.
I'm not ready to propose any amendment because I want to understand what is our objective, Mr. President, sa ating current bill.
Yes. I think this is in the case of mixed-use development. Yung commercial area, talagang linilis lamang sa private developers. Samantalang yung housing, talagang binibenta sa mga owners with their own title.
So, may the chair
Yes, yes,
interject?
yes.
If the purpose of the sale, purchase, sale, or lease, or exchange is for mixed use, or is it just lease that's for mixed use?
Yes, that's right.
Only lease.
Yes, lease, comma.
But purchase, sell, exchange is for housing development, resettlement, etc.
Yes.
Correct? So can we just carve out lease
Yeah.
and say that lease refers to mixed use? But that eminent domain purchase, sale, and exchange pertains
To
to
purposes of
housing
housing,
development, blah, blah, blah.
resettlement, and other related services and facilities, or lease. Then I'll add na lang at
Provided,
the end.
however, that in the case of lease, it shall only
Yes.
apply to mixed development.
Or lease in the case of mixed-use development.
Mixed-use development.
Okay?
Senator Koko?
Mr. President, clarificatory questions na naman ito.
Yes.
So, if we can, if the sponsor or the Senate President can introduce amendments to clarify the intention, we will just listen and then we'll just ask for a clean copy ulit, Mr. President. Marami-rami kasing... marami-rami.
Then, may the chair propose the amendment to cover the concerns of Senator Pimentel? Page
Yes.
8, line 1, delete the word
Lease.
lease, and after the semicolon on line 3,
Yes.
delete the
Delete the semicolon, replace
Delete
it with
the
a comma, and add, or lease in the case of mixed-use developments.
Yes.
Semicolon.
subject to style. Is there any objection? There being none, amendment is approved. Moving forward. Other amendments on page 8.
Yes, Mr. President. And page 8, line 4, so which is paragraph B. Issue bonds. Is this a new...
If we will
yes.
allow, I think nakaligtaan po yung section 6 pa rin, page 7. I'm sorry to go back, but
Anterior amendment.
there's an anterior amendment that was skipped, and that was after the enumeration K to insert a new paragraph L to read as follows: in the absence of an existing plan or capacity to improve resettlement sites, authorize the authority to facilitate and accept unsolicited proposals from LGUs and joint ventures with private developers pursuant to RA 11966 or the Public-Private Partnership Code of the Philippines. I think that's not controversial and has previously
Any
been
objection to the
discussed.
proposed amendment? We'll provide a clean copy
And-
for the information of our minority leader. We will not approve this as of yet. Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
Well, if I remember that law, Mr. President, medyo may stringent ano naman dun eh.
Yes.
Stringent
Yes.
requirements naman yung
I was the one
unsolicited.
who
So,
provided for that.
it-
On page 8, line 4, going back to the point of the amendment of the
Yes,
minority leader.
page 8, line 4, issue bonds. Is this a new power we're giving NHA?
9-4. May issue bonds pa. Isn't that old? I believe that this was in the original charter of NHA in the presidential decree.
Has NHA ever issued a bond?
Don't think so. I don't believe so. They've never exercised this power.
Check nyo na. Page 8,
What?
line 8.
Sorry.
Yes.
Somebody seems to remember 1982. Some kind of NHA bond was issued. Is there anyone old enough to remember? Yes. Meron ba? Yes, but the bonds were issued and very quickly fully paid. They were subscribed and fully paid, I believe. In 1982, they did exercise the right. I'm corrected.
Yun po yung next question ko. If yes, did they fully pay the bond obligations?
When was it
Yes,
fully
then.
paid?
Yes, then. Galing.
1991, it was fully paid after the issuance in 1982.
Sige po. So it's an old power in existing law, and they actually availed, they exercised the power. Can I proceed to another matter?
Yes, please.
Moving forward,
Yes, thank you.
Page 8, line 8, paragraph C. Invest its funds as it may deem proper. May extra funds ba ang NHA for investing, Mr. President?
Wala po. Talagang kulang pa. Kaya nga hindi umuusad masyadong mabilis ang ating housing.
Is this a new a new power or
This is
authority?
also contained in the original presidential decree, the charter.
Do they have funds invested somewhere?
I believe they have no investment portfolio at all right now.
Binabantayan natin yan kasi
Kaya nga eh.
sa PhilHealth.
That's correct.
Ang laki-laki ng investable funds, pero ang primary purpose mo is to spend for health.
Tama,
Okay, to
nakalimutan
spend
gastusin.
Pero ma'am, is it correct, Mr. President, that we change the and here to or? Sa invest its funds as it may deem proper in bonds and securities issued or guaranteed by the government or by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Is the existing law and issued and guaranteed, and we're changing it to issued or guaranteed? Tama ba?
The original law or and
Are we changing it?
are we changing it? Is that deliberate or
So-
a typo?
So the power might be existing, but there is some nuance that we are changing, Mr. President.
So and
Did we change?
I think we restored the old one. I think there seems to be a typo or a mistake. There's no intent to change.
No, this is PD 757.
Yes.
In letter M, section 6, letter M. Invest its funds as it may deem proper in bonds and securities issued and guaranteed by the government or by the Central Bank of the Philippines.
That's right.
Sa ating bill, or.
Yes, thank
So,
you very
what are we
much
doing?
for citing
What are we
that.
doing?
We should restore and maintain the old end.
And so, Mr. President, a motion now is to amend.
To amend.
On page 8,
On
line
page
8,
8, line 8.
after the word issued, delete the word or, and in lieu thereof, insert the word and.
Yes.
Yes, we so move.
I so move, Mr. President. We so move, Mr. President.
So move jointly. There being no objection, the amendment is approved.
Okay. So, this is about kasi the investment of the funds of the NHA.
Oo nga,
Ang sinasabi ng NHA sa atin, wala silang investable funds.
Sa ngayon.
Sa ngayon, yes, correct. Pero bakit po sa corporate operating budget ng NHA, ang laki-laki ng reported operations budget nila? It's in the 20 billion, 25 billion pesos, Mr. So that we will understand. Akala tuloy, this representation got the impression na marami rin siguro kayong investable funds o na-invest na funds, Mr. President.
I believe, as explained during the period of interpellation, those are the funds that are carried over from years past and are being utilized for ongoing construction projects.
But how can 20 billion pesos be reported every year as part of corporate operating budget? Hindi ba ang corporate operating budget is for that particular fiscal year ang pinag-uusapan natin? Kasi pag tanungin ng NHA kung may pera kayo o wala, kulang. Tapos, pag tignan mo yung corporate operating budget, in the billions, 20 billion, Mr.
Yung
President.
20 billion, nakakontrata na yun, ongoing na yung mga projects na yun. They're all obligated and they're actually disbursed partially to different projects. Some of them are in Marawi. They have funds from DPWH. They have funds from DOTR, all these funds that are already allocated to different projects. They're, strictly speaking, not really operating funds.
Kaya nga, is there some misreporting in the COB of NHA or talagang nahirapan lang ako intindihin ang COB ng NHA?
May
Kasi
kaguluhan po.
every year, ganun
Kine-carry over ng
meron
kine-carry
silang
over.
yes. So, paano nangyari yun? We get the impression that they are spending that much every year, Mr. President.
Hindi nagagastos yung kanilang iba't ibang trust fund or yung mga pondo na linilipat ng DOTR, DPWH at nakikarry over year on year. Kaya pa ulit-ulit lang hanggat hindi natatapos. Pero yung COB, kung mapapansin po ninyo, hindi naman pareho yung amount. Lumiliit ng lumiliit over time kasi natatapos rin yung mga project at
Yes.
nagbabayad din.
Yes, pero pag if we add the COB for 2 consecutive years, it doesn't mean that the NHA spent the total nung dalawang tama.
No.
Kaya nga
That's right. So there's something wrong. I agree that there's something wrong with the reporting because it appears like the amount is being spent on an annual basis when in fact it's a mere carryover of the previous year.
Ito LBRM. I'm reading from an LBRMO document, Mr. President, where it is stated that the projected beginning cash balance for fiscal year 2025 of NHA is 17.696 billion pesos. Tama po ba yun? More or less doon sa vicinity na yon?
Yes, kasi ang nangyayari, kapag hindi nagagastos lahat, kine-carry over sa susunod na taon. Pero kapag dinagdag mo yung mga taon, hindi talaga yun ang total na nakuha nila. Kine-carry over lang nila from the previous year. Kasi hindi pa nauubos, hindi pa nagagastos, hindi pa natatapos yung project.
Okay, but that's actual cash held by the NHA.
17 billion.
17.69 billion.
May cash, may receivables, anticipated receivables.
That's
Halo-halo po yan. May cash on hand na talaga. These are usually the transfers from DOTR, DPWH, and so on. Meron ring receivables na ina-anticipate na makokolekta at meron rin mga certified receivables na makokolekta within the year. So, lahat yun.
Kaya nasa projected, ang tawag, projected beginning cash, ano pa?
That's right. Kaya projected lang.
But since nag-start na si year 2025, so we now have the figure as a matter of fact. What was the beginning cash balance for January 1, 2025? Kasi ito projected noong time na sinulat siya. So, I'm asking all of these questions, Mr. President, while we are still in this section about investing its funds. Kasi ayaw natin ang ending nito na parang PhilHealth.
Baka ma-PhilHealth tayo.
Ang daming funds na naka-invest, Mr. President. Sinabi naman sa atin ng NHA General Manager na wala silang funds na invested. Pero that's why we're clarifying if they hold so much cash, why and what do they do with the cash?
Nagpapakumanin sila, wala pa silang
Wala pa. Sige po.
mga liquidated at saka naayos ng mga kwenta for the year end. But having said that, kahalo kasi dyan yung mga receivables.
Yes.
So, anticipated and projected pa lamang yan.
Yes, the report, aminado ko projected, but
Oo.
nag-start na yung year, so they must have the figure. But at any rate, Mr. President, we are willing to move on.
I believe September, the latest cash balance, it's at 21 billion.
Malaki
Correct?
din.
Yeah.
Malaki, Mr. President. So at least, thank you for the information from NHS. So, we're willing to move on with the amendment process, Mr. President. So, if we're yielding to the sponsor, Mr. President.
Yes, we are now on number 10. So, on the same on the same section, page 9.
We're on page 9, okay.
Yes, we're now on page 9, line 3. To simply delete the conjunction and after the word process. I so move.
Any
Mr.
objection?
President.
There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same section on page line 6, delete the punctuation mark period and in lieu thereof insert the punctuation mark semicolon and the conjunction and after the word sector. I so move, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same section and page, line 7 na po ito, after the enumeration E, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. So that would be the new paragraph F. engage in land banking by acquiring and investing in land situated in strategic locations, particularly near train stations, ports, and other high-capacity transit hubs for purposes of socialized housing development in coordination with the Department of Transportation, Public Works and Highways, NEDA, and Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. I so move, Mr.
Any
President.
objection to the proposed amendment? There being none, amendments approved.
Thank you very much, and we thank Senator Risa Ontiveros for bringing up this provision and the transport housing policy.
The lady, the sponsor, may proceed.
On page 23, unless there are others, I jump to page, page 19.
Hanggang
section
20 lang po yung
23.
akin.
Yeah, page 19, section 23. Unless the minority leader has further questions.
The lady may proceed.
On section 23, page 19, line 10, after the word charter, to insert a new paragraph to read as follows. The DHSUD shall cause the NHA board to deliberate and reach agreements on the reorganization of the NHA pursuant to RA 11201, especially with regard to the mandates of the NHA and its relations to other key shelter agencies and local government units. An advisory group composed of the GCG, NEDA, and DHSUD shall assist the NHA board in formalizing the reorganization as it pertains to the NHA. The DHSUD shall ensure the translation of the KSA reorganization into operational approaches, staffing patterns, and resources for the NHA. In support of the NHA board, the NEDA and GCG shall periodically evaluate the fitness for purpose of the programs, activities, projects, and personal development of the NHA corresponding to this revised role of the NHA. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the long amendment? There being none, amendment is approved.
Okay, on page 19 still, after line 21, to insert a new section 25, to be known as the mandatory review section, to read as follows. Section 25, mandatory review, 5 years after the effectivity of the Act, and every 5 years thereafter. The DHSUD, COA, and GCG shall conduct a systematic evaluation of the authority, its performance and organizational structure, if necessary, recommend reorganization, consolidation, or abolition and transition of the authority. Indicators shall include housing production, occupancy, collection efficiency, number of families served, findings of the COA, and beneficiary feedback. This evaluation report shall be released and made available to the stakeholders and the public. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? And to renumber the succeeding sections accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved to include the renumbering of subsequent sections.
In relation to the insertion of this new section, may I at this juncture be allowed to go back to section 4 under name and corporate assistance to introduce a new amendment.
What page?
3 po, line 18. Is that correct?
The lady may proceed.
Yes, page 3, line 18. After the word another, remove the word and figure 50, referring to years, to replace it with the word and figure 25, referring also to the years.
Any objection? There being none, proposed amendment is approved.
And lastly, on page 3, line 18, after the year 2025, to insert the phrase, subject to the mandatory review as provided under Section 25 of this Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Mr. President, these are all the individual amendments on Senate Bill 2818 under Committee Report 319. Thank you very
There's a
much.
question,
And
Isabel.
yes, Minority
Question.
Leader.
The minority leader may proceed.
On section 5, page 3, capitalization. We are now increasing the capitalization of the authority to 10 billion pesos from 5 billion pesos.
That's correct.
May I know what's the practical effect of increasing the capitalization of government-owned corporation government-owned or controlled corporation from 5 billion to 10 billion. What's the practical effect?
Well, time and again, we have highlighted the fact that our national housing program is so underfinanced. And I believe after the long period of 50 years, a doubling of its capitalization is actually quite meager. So,
Yes. But what's the practical effect? Diba? Every year we include in the GAA subsidy to the NHA. What's the effect here, Mr. President?
yes, but if you will notice, Minority Leader, the last couple of years have been very, very small in terms of the budget allocation. It's a mere 2 billion. And given the number of emergency and disaster housing that we've been having to put up, it's barely enough. So the capitalization at 10 billion, kulang na kulang pa rin.
And in some laws, Mr. President, we say fully to be subscribed by the government, and we also mention how it is to be paid. How the subscription is to be paid. Dito po wala eh. So what does this mean? Kung naging 10 billion, so under the law, 10 billion na yung authorized capital stock ninyo, but you don't have that in cash infusion unless we specify how will the Republic of the Philippines pay for the shares?
Well, NHA will be very happy if you include it in the GAA po.
So wala pa.
Siguro we seek guidance from
Or in the law.
Yeah, we seek guidance from the Senate President on how, Mr. Senate President, if we can bring your attention to page 3, lines 19 to 23 on the capitalization. We increase it to 10 billion to be fully subscribed by the Republic of the Philippines. But we are silent on how it is to be paid. Iba ata yung subscription lang, walang cash ano yun eh. Wala yatang pasok ng pera sa NHA yun. So, is it advisable that we also mention in the charter, on this law, how it is to be paid by the Republic of the Philippines? Kasi sa Maharlika
That's
Bill,
right.
sa Maharlika Bill, ginawa ninyo yun na how it is to be paid.
Tama. Pero kasi yung dati, talagang yung 5 billion nang galing sa budget.
Correct.
So, ito ngayon, yung 10 billion, sasabihin rin natin na magagaling sa budget. O baka magka-problema tayo dyan.
I think the intention, if